I think when I was younger, it was definitely a financial pressure. There were kind of two kinds of kids, working kids, really. There was the kids that were doing it to put food on the table for mommy and daddy, and then like the thespian children, like, mommy, I want to go into acting. And they would show up, and it would be this huge gap between philosophies, between like, yeah, man, it's a job, and like, no, this is a craft. This is, this is an art. And those kids kind of showed up around 14. And for me, I think I had trained a kind of workaholism since I was a child, in order to, one, feel valued by my environment, both immediate family and audience in very many cases, that has stuck with me, a work ethic that has stuck with me now to this day. Like I do not feel good when I am not working. And I think a lot of people can say that. And that's something I've been trying to unpack over the last year and a half, is what would happen if I just simply stepped away for good and enjoyed my life, which is really the purpose of why we're all here. Would I be content with sitting down and fishing and growing my own vegetables and, living sustainably? Or would I get so disenfranchised and bored that I would have to take back to the arts in some way or another? And I think the pressure of my upbringing really compelled me to continue doing what I am today. I cannot live without the arts. I mean, I cannot live without performance or expression in some kind, because it's truly all I know and have known since I was 8 months old.
Since you were 8 months old,
yeah,
you hold the record for being the guest on this show that started working the earliest. Tell me.
Well, to be fair, I don't know if we can call it work. I don't believe I cued into consciousness until about like 10 years ago. When you're a baby, you have that kind of lantern consciousness where only, whatever exists is only in your immediate purview. And then as you age, and you start to become less present, you're like, wow, I'm an adult and I feel like shit all the time. So I don't know about if I perceived it as work, but it certainly infused within me a kind of work ethic as I have aged. But yeah.
It established a relationship with work.
Mm-hmm. It did. I mean, it started for me financially. Single mom, 2 twin boys, put food on the table. She is still able to be a mother while we can still pursue a sort of improvement of our lifestyle. And in very many ways, she was living vicariously through the success of her children. But I think it certainly developed a relationship to professionalism much earlier than almost anyone else I know.
Were you used the word pushed earlier? Yeah. Were you pushed into acting, in your view?
Well, I didn't. I would hardly call it pushing because I was 8 months old. I don't even think I knew. I was on screen. I don't remember much of like the early, the diaper commercials and things like that. So the choice never really existed. I was there. That's it.
How do you feel about that?
I think gratefulness and ungratefulness can exist simultaneously. And I am tremendously grateful of the financial stability I have acquired now as a 30-year-old. And being able to say, yeah, I'm okay now. I think in many ways I traded sort of the lantern consciousness of youth and sort of the carefree presentedness of youth for financial stability that I would come to appreciate as an older man. But I don't regret too much. I don't. I think if I were to sit here and talk about regretting my childhood within the industry, I think that would be silly. It toughened the hell out of both my brother and I, and many kids that go through that same thing. But I'm grateful for the financial stability of it. Yeah. And I also am grateful to have done it in a time where you could get your Gladwell 10,000 hours in anonymously. If you did a crappy direct-to-DVD movie, just for kicks, I'm looking at you for anyone who knows this. If you did your crappy soccer movie, it would go to the back of Blockbuster and no one would see it. Now with social media, I mean, there's no way that you can cut your teeth in silence anymore.
Your parents, you mentioned single mother. Mm-hmm. As I read through your story, I saw a ton of similarities between the way you described your relationship with your mother and the way that I often describe the relationship still to this day with my mother. Can you tell me about both your mother and your father and the journey you kind of went on? I know at 5 years old, roughly, they divorced.
Sure. I don't remember the exact timeline of divorce, but I remember only having one memory of them being together when I was very, very young. And then from that point on, my father was in Switzerland and my mother was in LA. He would eventually move out to LA in order to try and repair the family. But my mother was, still is, the kind of tortured artist type. She struggled with, in very many ways, her place in the world. I think she found a tremendous amount of self-identity through motherhood and tried to turn it into a profitable business at the same time, which for identical twin boys going into acting is sort of economic loophole through labor laws that can be incredibly profitable. So that's what she did. And as I've thought about it, it seemed like to me, it made a lot of financial sense to her to put us into acting. I think it satisfied some sort of narcissism that she probably had in order to be recognized as this sort of artistic success. She was a wonderful painter. So she always wanted sort of artistic legitimacy and validation. But as time went on, I think the entertainment industry just kind of broke her. You know, this industry in very many ways, it encourages the worst qualities of you as a person. Narcissism, selfishness, greed, a lot of these things that we have come to know as practically cardinal sins. It's one of those things that encouraged a kind of selfishness that was directly opposed to the very fundamental idea of motherhood. And as I grew older, in my case, the court had to step in and rend my brother and I towards our father, who's an incredible guy. But that selfishness is something that the legal system also observed and said that she was unfit. And I think as I've aged and I've looked back on a lot of the circumstances of that entire environment, I see a person that grapples with mental illness, drug abuse, but primarily narcissism, a wicked narcissism. The inability to perceive anything outside your own perspective would probably be the biggest sickness I see. And that just doesn't work with being the mother. That just doesn't work with being in a family in general. You know, when it rains on everyone's roofs. That's how it goes. It takes a village, man. And selfishness that is encouraged very much, like I said, from the industry, just doesn't really work. It doesn't really work for being a mother.